Hello, happy Pride Month. We are back. So this year for Pride, I'm only reading one book, but it's a very highly anticipated book, and I've been wanting to read it for several months now. And that book is Don't Let the Forest In. I wanted to read this book because I saw it in a bookstore and I read the back and it sounded so incredibly interesting. And then the next day I was on TikTok, I believe, and I heard that the main character was asexual. And I've never read a book with an asexual main character before. And so I've just been really wanting to read it since because the plot sounds so interesting. It's a YA horror novel, which even though I've come to the realization that they're not really for me, I still want to try them out so badly. And it's about an asexual character that I've never really read before. So that's going to be fun and exciting. And I'm so excited to read this. I can't wait. The cover is absolutely stunning, let me tell you. I struggle not to buy it every time I go into a bookstore, but I will be listening to it, getting it from my library. And then I'm also excited because later this year, the author is coming out with a new book called Hazelthorn. That one sounds just as interesting to me. And so I'm excited because maybe I'm finding a new author whose releases I want to follow, and that's always really lovely. So yes, I'm very excited. I genuinely cannot wait. I think it's going to be great. I would be astounded if I didn't like this book because there's just something in my gut and in my heart telling me that I'm going to love this book. So yeah, let's just go read it because I just got it at the library, so I'm so excited. So I'm 16% of the way through, which is chapter 6 or an hour and 19 minutes into this book. And so far I'm genuinely really loving it. I've never read a book where the main character is asexual. So I'm very excited just to see how this character is written and how that topic is just handled in general. I've met all of the main characters so far and I really, really like them. The one is this very protective, angsty guy who gets in fights and rule breaker, but he's not like a embarrassing like bad boy type of person. And then the other main character is just this absolute sweetheart that's kind of scared of the world but writes these really, really dark horror novels. I genuinely just can't wait to see where this goes, and I'm really enjoying it to the point where even 2x speed for me is too much. Normally I read on a minimum of 2x speed, and now I'm reading it on 1.75. I don't know, I'm just very excited to keep going. The first hour has been just really, really lovely, and I'm excited to see where this goes. So I'm not that much farther in. I'm at chapter 10, which is 2 hours and 13 minutes into the audiobook, or 27%. And so I don't really have much more to say other than the fact that this book is so emo. One of the main characters we're following, Andrew, I think his name is, so incredibly emo. It is very in your feelings, very mopey sad. It's not a bad thing, but it just is a thing that I would like to point out. So do with that information what you will. Hi. So I'm about 73% of the way through Don't Let the Forest In, and I'm weirdly conflicted because first and foremost, there feels like there's still so much left to discover, and it feels like we're so far from the ending, but then it also feels like we're 90% of the way through and the book's going to end very soon. So I'm a bit confused, conflicted, whatever you want to call it, about the pacing of this novel, and I'm not really sure where it's going. But I'm really, really enjoying it. I did mention earlier that it's very emo, and I did want to talk about that really quickly. It is incredibly emo, and it can be very triggering, I think. I think this is one of those books where if you're in a dark mental space, this book will either be very triggering to you or it will be very cathartic. And so I just wanted to mention that in case you're planning on picking it up, but you're just not mentally doing the best or emotionally, that this book could worsen that just a little bit. bit. And by emo, I mean the main character does have an ED. I'll list the link to Storygraph below so that you can go look at the trigger warnings yourself. But there's bullying, the main character has an ED. It definitely touches on sensitive topics, obviously. Also, our main character is dealing with figuring out that he is asexual and he has a crush on someone. Well, not really crush, like he's infatuated with someone, but he doesn't know how to handle it because he can't be in a normal relationship, and he's like dealing with that. And then obviously the woes of coming out and coming to terms with your identity like that. It's a bit tough to read through, but it's also, again, like it can either be triggering or cathartic depending on where you are mentally, emotionally. And so I did want to talk about that. And then when I say this book is emo, I wanted to explain a little bit. And one of the quotes, this isn't a direct quote because I'm listening to the audiobook and this happened like 2-3 hours ago, but one of the quotes was the main character, his love interest, got wounded on his chest right here. And not direct quote, but he says something along the lines of, I want to dig my hand into his wound, break his rib off, and sew it to mine so we could be together forever. Which is like, okay. Maybe don't do that. So, like, that's what I mean when I say it's very emo. Like, it's very emotional. They're very sad. They feel their feelings very deeply. And it's not a bad thing, but I just wanted to mention going into it that this is definitely a darker novel. And it deals with all of these things. And it's a fun read. It's a good read, but it's a dark and emotional read as well. And not in a bad way. Just, it is what it is. So I did want to bring that up in case you have sensitivities toward that, but I'm excited to finish it. I am still enjoying it. Luckily, the darker topic did not affect me too much, but I do wish I had known going into it that it was going to be like this, so that's a bit of a shame, but it's fine. And then last but not least, I also just wanted to say again, the main horror element is body horror. It gets very gross, and like I said, main character is very emo, so he has a couple of unhinged thoughts like the rib thing. There's more that come from that, and so I just did want to mention that. But so far so good, and I will check in once I've finished. Hi, so apologies for how I look and sound. Hand is broken. I'll talk about it in the June vlog, but just excuse me, we're having technical difficulties because I have no hands because I'm right-handed, so thank you for bearing with me. But I did finish Don't Let the Forest In, and I did end up giving it 4 stars. I finished it several days ago at this point. First and foremost, I do just have to say the writing is very beautiful. I really loved the way that the author described these very large, deep feelings in an incredibly abstract way, but that ended up helping you understand the characters and their feelings in a very poetic sort of way. And I really enjoyed that. I really connected with that. I felt incredibly bad for all of the characters and the things that they had to deal with. This book is just one of those books that you want to just grab the characters and take them out of the story and put them somewhere warm and fuzzy and just somewhere where they could be happy. The plot was also incredibly interesting. I really loved the dynamic between Andrew and Thomas. Seeing Andrew trying to find himself and eventually kind of choosing the asexual label was a very vulnerable experience to watch him go through, but in a very lovely way. I really liked how the author went about addressing his feelings for Thomas, the difficulties that come with being asexual, but having someone that you are in love with. Also, just how she described the difference between a romantic love and a sexual love, and how those two things aren't necessarily the same, and they aren't necessarily correlated. Like, you don't need to have one to have the other. I just really liked that plot of the story and how it was talked about, and I think it was done very well. I think if you're someone who doesn't fully understand what asexuality is or how it works, I think this book is a great way to go about trying to learn about it, especially because, as I mentioned before, Andrew is so emo and he feels his feelings so deeply that it gives an exaggerated version almost of an example in a good way, because it, like, you can fully understand it and see how it feels, and then you can apply it to a more realistic relationship. The one thing about this novel that I personally didn't really like that much was the vagueness of the ending, and it really threw me off. This book has one of those endings that is incredibly vague. You don't really know what happens, and it is on purpose. And it's related to the point of the story, so it makes sense. But I didn't like it because the way it ended, I need to know and understand what happened, and the fact that I don't is quite frustrating. And then also some things that are revealed in the last few chapters makes the entire plot almost a bit ambiguous, and it's one of those books where you leave it thinking, how did it end? Who is who? What is what? Did someone actually die? Were there any real, like, who's dead, who's alive? What even happened? What was real? And you leave it just questioning everything. And I understand that that is a purposeful thing, but I just, for myself, wish there was more clarity, because now every time I think about this book, I kind of spiral. And the thing is, the ambiguity does make it in such a way where I can envision the ending that I want to envision, but then it also comes with the fact that for me, the way the ending was written, my brain immediately goes to ending number 3, even though I want to believe that it's ending number 5, and I'm constantly arguing with myself about which one actually happened, because it could be any of them. And I want it to be ending number 5, but when I read it, my brain went, oh, ending 3, that's what happened. And so it's just very confusing, and it's not something that I'm a fan of. However, it did make me hate this book. It's just an unfortunate consequence of having read this book, if that makes sense. It's one of those things where it's like, normally I don't like it, but this book did it in such a way where I can forgive it. The reason I ended up giving it 4 stars, despite the fact that the book's ending was so ambiguous, it made the entirety of the plot so ambiguous, is because it was beautifully written. I fell in love with the writing. I was so incredibly attached to these characters, and the novel made me feel so many things, both for them and just in general. I was sobbing at the end. That's why I waited so long to film this wrap up, because it's been, as I said, several days, maybe a week, because every time I would think about this book, I wanted to cry. I was telling my fiance about this book and all of the possible endings, and I had to pause every few minutes because I wanted to cry, because of how sad some of the ending options are, in my opinion. And I did actually Google what happened at the end, and I read a bunch of Reddit theories, and there are so many different theories out there, and they're all very good. So if I can find the Reddit link again, I'll link that below for if you have read this novel. In general, it was a beautiful book. It was a well-written book. The plot was interesting. I haven't listened to an audiobook in a very long time that made me want to listen to it on a slow speed. Usually I keep wanting to speed it up, and this is the first time where I got to a point where I was listening to it on 1.5 and I refused to listen to it any quicker because I just really wanted to absorb the story, and that hasn't happened to me in a very long time, so I really do appreciate that. My God, is this just such a sad book though. So definitely just go in knowing that it is sad, it is dark, it is emo. Don't be taken aback by that. But I 100% recommend, especially for Pride Month, for a spooky summer. Well, it's actually very autumnal, but I read it in the summer and it feels like a fit for a summerween type of novel. So I would recommend it. I think it's 4 stars. Just please go in knowing that it's sad, and there's a very strong possibility that you might shed a few tears, and also go in knowing that the ending is a bit ambiguous. And if you don't like that, I would still recommend giving this book a shot, because I don't like it and I like this book. Just know that it is there and be prepared for it. So yeah, if you read this book, I would love to know how you think this novel ended. Please put spoiler warnings and make sure that it's not there so that anyone watching this doesn't spoil it for themselves. But please let me know what your theory is for how the book ended. If you like me or my videos, I would really appreciate a like, comment, and subscribe if you feel like it. I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye.